Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me briefly respond to some of the Chair's comments in her time. First of all, the report she highlighted, just want to point out that half the time period covered by that report covers EPA under Republican leadership. So that report reflects EPA under half Republican and half Democratic leadership. Secondly, let me ask Chairman Boxer's staff to hold up the smog poster. Just want to state for the record, no Republican supports anything like that situation, and certainly we have supported and will support regulations that always avoid that and reduce that sort of risk. Third, let me point out that we're probably going to talk 99% of our time today about carbon and greenhouse gas issues that have nothing to do with smog and particulate matter, nothing at all. And so just wanted to point that out. Now, I know a lot of political debate in Washington is pretty cartoonish, but I would hope that in the Committee of Jurisdiction for the EPA, we can get beyond that and talk about facts and substance in a meaningful way. So that's what I'm going to try to do. Ms. McCabe, electricity reliability. Yesterday, as I'm sure you know, Administrator McCarthy noted that EPA needs to closely align with DOE and FERC when designing the greenhouse gas emissions proposal for existing power plants. And last week, importantly, at FERC, there was a discussion about how the sizable increase in electricity demand in January was served mostly from coal-fired generation, while natural gas generation actually declined. Have you reached out to FERC to discuss those findings, since it's relevant to the greenhouse gas emission discussion?
We do communicate with FERC and with DOE on an ongoing basis about our rules.
Have you personally talked to FERC about this issue?
I have not personally talked to FERC about the issue that you just referred to.
And has your staff directly talked to FERC about their presentation last week and the consequences of that?
I don't know, Senator.
Okay. If you could supplement the record on that.
Sure.
Do you agree that this scenario illustrates the need for additional sources of reliable energy in major quantities besides natural gas for electricity generation?
I agree that we need to pay close attention to making sure that we have a reliable energy supply and that a diverse energy supply is important to this country.
Okay, thank you. I want to move to the Endangered Species Act. EPA's proposed NSPS rule will likely force a shift away from coal-fired energy toward many things that are much more land-intensive sources of energy. In addition, things like wind have the potential to kill endangered species like the California condor. Now, according to Fish and Wildlife Director Dan Ash, his agency has an obligation to consult when there are potential impacts to endangered or threatened species. And yet, EPA and his agency are not consulting on that NSPS rule. What are the specific legal and policy reasons behind EPA not consulting with Dan Ash and his agency about that, while consulting, for instance, on 316 rulemaking, which would seem to have a much less serious potential impact?
Well, thank you, Senator. I'm familiar with the Endangered Species Act requirements, and I want to emphasize that we are early in the process of this particular rulemaking. And before we finalize any rule under this program, we would make sure that we satisfied our obligations under the Endangered Species Act.
Would that include formal consultation, which has not yet been triggered, with Fish and Wildlife?
If that's determined to be required, Senator.
Why wouldn't that be appropriate given what I talked about, given the shift toward much more land-intensive energy sources and wind, which has consequences on birds?
I think, Senator, as we move through the rulemaking process, we need to evaluate exactly what is required under the Endangered Species Act, and that's what we intend to do.
Okay, finally, on social cost of carbon. As you know, we discovered last November that your office provided technical assistance for modeling on this ongoing effort. 3 related questions. Number 1, did you participate in the interagency working group? Number two, did you sign off on any contributions made by your office, including the technical assistance and modeling provided? And number three, in our continued effort to bring transparency to a process that seems very closed, would you commit to providing the committee with the names and titles of those in your office that participated or signed off on EPA's contributions to the development of the social cost of carbon estimates, and if so, by what date?
Senator, I did not personally participate in those discussions. That is a process that is not run by the Office of Air and Radiation, nor indeed by the EPA, so I'm not in a position to commit to providing information about it, but I'll be glad to take that question back.
And if you could answer the other parts of the question for the record, did you sign off on the work that did come out of your office related to this? And will you provide names, titles, participation levels of anyone out of air and radiation on this project?
I apologize, Senator. I thought I had caught most of the parts of those questions. I did not officially sign off or in writing on participation. Certainly, EPA scientists and technical experts do participate in various interagency work groups, and so I was aware of that. And as I said, I'd be glad to take back your request that we provide information, more specific information.
Okay, and the request is specifically about your office.
I understand.
So it's fully within your bailiwick. We'd just like to know, we're trying to understand this process, which has been quite hidden, quite frankly. Just want to know who's in it, what their involvement was.
I understand your interest, Senator.
Senator Carper.